Hi, this is Mark from Mark4C. Welcome to the video. This video is an introduction to quadcopter building with a couple of thoughts that I've had from building my first quad to where I am now. You don't want to spend too much money and you want to get into the air quick. Thanks for your time.
Okay, so there's a lot of places you can go and buy equipment for this hobby. Lots of local hobby shops, which is great to support. Some difficult things to ship internationally that you can get in your local hobby shop, and I would only recommend that you support them. However, it can be a very, very expensive hobby. So there's other places we can get it, mainly from Asia. Typically places like Banggood, GearBest, and then of course you can get it on eBay, which is probably the cheapest of them all. So what I would suggest you start off with is a good solid, 5-inch, 5-inch prop, carbon frame. This is a 280. You can get 250s, 210s, etc. But again, a big frame where there's lots of space in the middle to put your components, lots of room on the arms for your ESCs, maybe on the top or the bottom for your battery. That's totally a preference thing. And what you don't want to do is spend too long. There's so much information out there, you can get very confused very quickly. So what you want to do is get building and get flying. Some people are very, very worried about the soldering. Again, you need a good soldering iron, fine tip, practice on old components, old circuit boards, buy some kits. Don't come to the quad with it being your first time to solder. A little bit of soldering on the power distribution board or PDB, a little bit of soldering on the flight controller. That's all. Don't worry about that too much. So let's start and think about the components of the quad first. So this carbon frame is an Emax Nighthawk clone from eBay. The arms are separate, which is fantastic. There is a little bit of space. There's this kind of a bottom frame that sits underneath, and I've got my PDB under that facing down. Got a couple of little O-rings, picked it up at Aldi or Lidl or someplace like that. Where you put them between the board and the carbon fibre. The carbon fibre is conductive, so even if you're putting it directly against the carbon fibre, you need to put something in between. So I have my PDB underneath. I have a flight controller in the middle. I have a video transmitter on the top. I have a camera at the front. I have a receiver for the remote control, radio control at the back. I have 4 motors, 1 on each arm, and I have 4 ESCs, 1 on each arm, and I have a 3S or a 4S battery, and then I have a mount for a GoPro, a standard mount rather than you see people with the boxy mounts for the smaller GoPro sessions and run cams 3s, which are fantastic. I don't have one of those, so I have a regular mount here. So let's think about this for a second. Your motors, again, you can get them for multiple prices. These motors are ready to sky, typically a Chinese clone of the Emax 2300 kV motor. Lots and lots of negative feedback about these type of motors. I've had no problems with them at all. Very smooth, absolutely fine. Probably the cheapest motors you can get 4 of, 2205 2300 kV. Just under 1,000 grams of thrust, so not too bad if they're working. Then of course you can go up a little bit to Racer Stars, which I have actually ordered for my Martian 3 build, which I'll be making a video of as well. And the Racer Stars are definitely slightly better and slightly more expensive. And then of course you go up to motors like the Emax motors and other motors, DYS motors, which can be a lot more expensive. Same with the ESCs. You can either get 4 individual ESCs, or depending if you're building a different type of quad, however many you need. You definitely need 1 for each motor, or you can get a 4-in-1. Only problem with a 4-in-1 is if one of the parts of the circuit goes, it all goes. So much easier to replace a single ESC. ESCs used to be much lower amps, 15, 12 amps. Now they're 20, and now they're up to 30 and 40 amps because of the power that your motors will pull depending on the size of your battery. So I wouldn't say less than 20 amps. If you can, start off maybe with 28 amps, 30 amps. These are also, I would suggest 2 other things. Sorry, one is that it supports BLHeli S, and the second is that it supports D-Shot. Now, D-Shot is a small improvement over One-Shot, but they are a significant improvement over Multi-Shot. These old Little B favourite 20 amp ESCs are BLHeli, not BLHeli S, so they are running on One-Shot 125, but that's fine. Next, we talked about the power distribution board, just in here underneath facing downwards. Pads for the ESCs, pads for the signal. The signal goes up to the flight controller, and then the plus and minus goes to the 4 corners of the power distribution board. You can see them there. in the corners. And then of course there's a couple of other things that you want to plug. You can get 5 volts from the power distribution board to run your F3 type flight controller. If you have certain types of F4, they don't need 5 volts, they'll run off the battery power, but you need to make sure which type of one you have. So the SP Racing F3, fantastic flight controller, will run clean flight, beta flight, very simple to program. There's a deluxe and an acro version. In this early build, I put in the pin headers. I will never do that again. No need for all the pins, no need for all the soldering. Also in the way, so my USB port is sticking out to the back. Now I can just get at it, but much easier if it was at the side. Can't have that sticking out the side. I could have done the pin headers straight up, but I didn't know at the time. Didn't know any better. So it worked fine, but just for, kind of a heads up for yourself for later on. So motors, ESCs control the motors. Power distribution board distributes the power. Flight controller is the flight controller, like it says. Flight controller then connected to the radio receiver, which is for your radio control. This is a very old style one. It's connected on PWM, so a signal wire for every channel. The newer radio controls and receivers support S-Bus, I-Bus, even PPM, which is just one signal wire and everything comes in serial. So it depends what type of radio you have. You need to have the radio that's aligned to your receiver. But spend a little bit more, make sure you get one of the radios that supports S-Bus. When I started flying, I got a T6 because I didn't know any better, a FlySky T6. Now, this is a very nice to fly with radio, funny enough, I love it. And maybe it's because I started with it, but it doesn't support PPM or S-Bus or I-Bus. So you have to get a few of these old receivers, which are like $6 on eBay, but at the same time they're a bit bigger than some of the more modern ones. For my other radio, which is a Taranis, I have a very small XM Plus, tiny little board, and if you want telemetry you can get the XSR, and a few different other versions as well. And you can get, there's cameras now that have on-screen displays and everything, so it depends how much you want to look at when you're flying. So radio needs to be linked and bindable with your radio receiver, needs to be bindable with your radio. So that's the flying part. Obviously then you need a battery to power the whole thing. This is a 3S battery. It's an 1800 70C battery, and this is a 4S battery, so 3S, 4S, and the 4S is a 75C 1800, so you can see it's shorter, wider, a little bit thicker, but much more power. So I would recommend building for 4S from the beginning. Make sure you get the ESCs that can handle it. These are 20 amp, they can hold up to 25 amps for a burst of 10 seconds. Probably pushing it a little bit after that, so just be aware of that. If you're doing acro, if you're flying flat out the whole time, maybe more important, but if you're doing acro and trolling it around and reducing the throttle a lot, these will handle it no problem. Then of course a lot of people want to fly as if they're flying, so FPV, first person view, which means it's as if you're flying the aircraft. So here we have a camera at the front with a little board, and then we have a VTX under the top plate, which is just connected to this little antenna, and then that transmits the signal. Typically the receivers are 2.4 and the FPV is 5.8, so that they don't overlap. Cameras, you can go from less than $10 for this Sony Clone CCD, 100 TVL, right up to the very, very nice IVA Runcam Swift 2, which is a beautiful little camera, 2.1, 2.3, 2.8 focal lengths. And what you want to be able to do is see, fly. You have to think about the format, so PAL, NTSC. Most of the more expensive cameras are switchable or automatic, and then of course you have the 4:3 view, which is the old-fashioned almost square view, and then the 16:9 widescreen view. So it depends on what you like, and you may not know what you like until you actually go and try it. So good to start off somewhere, much easier if you do it that way. Then the VTX should be switchable, because if you have 2 or 3 people, or if you're racing, it must be switchable and you must be able to get at it. I have this very lightly connected, so it's easy to swing out, and I can switch the frequency on the channel very easily. It also has a race mode, so it'll pick them for me itself, which is fantastic. So that's the kind of quad itself. We talked about the batteries, then we talked about the radios. So this is the T6. I would suggest, if you're starting off, even at the beginning and you don't know, to get the i6 and if you can, even better, the i6S, which is only about another $10. Or if you really want to splash out, buy a Taranis QX7, which is lovely and soft to fly, uses OpenTX, lots of people out there programming for it, and it uses those very small receivers. It has a module bay, you can put in rechargeable batteries, of course, has SD card, S-port and USB, and again the receivers are tiny, so huge advantage. The other part that you need to do as well as control the quad is, of course, if you're flying, you need to get some set of goggles. So two real types of sets of goggles. One is the box goggle. This is a Vior 007 Pro. These are fantastic basic goggles. What I would suggest, these are typically $59.99, but they're actually $45.99 at the moment on Banggood, and you can always just watch out for them. Simple goggle, you can use them for friends once you've decided that you want to stay in the sport or in the hobby, and get some better goggles like these, which are the kind of smaller ones. Fat Shark, Iomway, Eachine have these 100s. I think they're bringing out 200s. Some people don't like these because they're very small field of view, and if you have glasses or if they don't suit you, it's very hard to adjust them, but very light on your head if you like them. Okay, so you can spend any amount of money you want. You can buy any amount of tooling. You need chargers, special types of chargers for Trios batteries. You need batteries themselves. You can have a soldering station. Always good to have a voltmeter, current meter for when you're soldering, making sure that there's continuity or that you haven't shorted anything out before you connect up the battery, if you don't want that magic smoke. So lots of fantastic sites out there to go and actually do the detail part of the build, but you could spend all your time doing research and never actually get to build or fly. Buy a cheap kit on eBay. Maybe buy some parts from your local store, especially the batteries. Maybe it's usually easier, they get stopped a lot in customs. The more expensive stuff, certainly think about doing that. Look for bargains locally if you can. If you can't, Banggood and GearBest are very, very good. And then if you know a good seller on eBay, I use Global Mart. They're fantastic. They, I've never ever had a problem, except that it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get anything. So that's what I'd say. Don't wait around. Do some research. Have a think about what you like. Get a sturdy frame. Save some bits of foam that you get from the packaging for stuff to put it on your quad. These actually comes with standoffs for the arms, of course. The minute it has a hard landing, it'll break the arms off. So you don't want that. And you know what? You don't know everything at the beginning. Go and build it. Have some fun building it. Learn a little bit about it, and get out there flying. That's the main thing. Alright, so that's it from me for this video. Thanks for watching. This was Mark from Mark Horsey.